All right. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. So, first of all, thank you everyone so much for coming and joining. This is the first time I'm doing a live workshop. So, thanks for being here with me. And I'm super excited to share what we're going to talk about today. It's been super life changing for me. So, I hope it's something that you all feel like is really useful and beneficial for you too. All right. So this is being recorded, but I'm going to record only the active speaker portion. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So again, welcome everyone. Today, what we're going to do is be going over how our brain works and then how we can actually use that to our advantage. And then understanding how inflammation happens and how it impacts our brain and our healing. And then go over 3 things that we can actually start doing today, tonight, whenever, to actually start your healing process. So you might want something to take notes with. I will send out the recording of this to everyone, so don't worry about that. And then if you wouldn't mind keeping your audio on mute until the end when we're doing question time, just to make sure there's no background noise. And I know it's halfway through the day and we're all coming from potentially busy things. So go ahead and take a second. We're just going to do a deep grounding breath together. I like to breathe in through my nose, filling up my belly. And a big loud sigh out your mouth while you breathe out any tension in your neck and your shoulders. All right. So before we get started, just a disclaimer, I am a naturopathic doctor, but today this is an educational capacity. This is not medical advice. And I'm just going to tell you about who I am really fast for some context. So I got really sick when I was 14 and I have multiple autoimmune conditions. Later on down the line, I found out I have Lyme and mold and a bunch of other things going on. So chronic complex illness has been part of my journey for a long time. So I'm actually a naturopathic doctor. I wasn't able to get well with conventional methods, and I found a naturopathic doctor who really helped me. So that really sparked my interest in holistic medicine. I'm a fan of all types of medicine when used appropriately in their time and place. And so I've gone to naturopathic med school. I did training in a clinic afterward where we worked with really tough cases. And I was able to see what was consistently missing from everyone's healing journey. And a lot of that was brain health. So that is the part that we're going to focus on today. It's just one part of what I do, but it's a super important missing piece. And I now act as a health coach, so I can reach a lot more people. And I work virtually, so I can see people everywhere. All right. So the point of today is that you are way more powerful than you think. You have more control than you think. That's not to say that anything about your illness is your fault. It's not at all. If you experience chronic symptoms, they are not your fault. But you have more power and control because your body is more amazing than you probably realize. So there's a lot more to your health than just what you do at your doctor's office with labs and medications and treatments. There's actually so much more, probably I would argue way more than you can do that you can do at home. And let one more person in. And then there's also more to your health than physical health. So I think, at least in the US and our society, we tend to really put a focus on our physical health. And I think that we overlook our emotional health and our mental health, and our social health and even our spiritual health, and the way that everything else in our life shows up and affects us as a whole, but it also impacts our physical health. And there's actually a newer wave of research coming out showing that our emotional health and our mental health physically change our body, and we can measure that even with things like labs. So at this point, there's no disputing how important it is to take a holistic look at our body. And it's also really important to keep up with our brain health. And I'm going to talk a lot today about the nervous system. And when I say the nervous system, I'm just talking about the brain and all of its communication and connections with all the other nerves in our body. And we always want our nervous system, the goal is for it to be regulated, we're balanced. And when we're talking about balancing the nervous system, I just want to put in perspective here that, that is something that's really helpful. I don't like for people to think of it as one more thing that they need to check off on the box to do. And we'll talk about the sympathetic part of our brain in a second and why that can contribute to it. So if you can, while we go through this information today, try to think of absorbing everything in a way that feels supportive and nourishing to you, and not like, oh, this is one more thing I need to focus on or one more thing to do. Instead, we're just taking all of this information and using it to support ourselves in a way that feels good. So here are some signs that your nervous system might be dysregulated or out of balance. So being really jumpy, being sensitive to light and sounds is a really common one. Having trouble focusing or getting distracted easily. Feeling your heart racing. Having racing thoughts in your mind, feeling like your brain doesn't turn off. This can especially show up if you can't wind down for sleep at night. And then some people find themselves clenching their jaw, holding their shoulders up really high, holding their breath, doing kind of postural muscle tension things during the day. And then feeling a little bit more antisocial than you normally would, not wanting to connect, constantly wanting stimulation. So when you know you need to go to sleep or you know you need to go do something, but your brain just wants you to keep scrolling and be distracted for another minute, or just let that Netflix queue keep rolling. And then just having this deep, from your belly kind of sense of uneasiness, and constantly thinking about your health. Health anxiety is so common when we have common symptoms and when we have chronic symptoms. And I'll talk about in a minute why that's so common. So in order to master how we can use the power of our brain as a tool, we need a good understanding of how our brain works. And when we understand how our brain works, then that knowledge becomes power. And our brain doesn't feel like this thing that can spiral out of control and hold all this anxiety for us. Instead, it becomes our friend, our ally, and a tool that we have at home for free to use, for us to help heal. So first off, we have a conscious part of our brain, and we have a subconscious involuntary part of our brain. This subconscious part of our brain that we don't pay attention to, we don't have a direct way of regulating it, it's automatic. It actually controls things like our breathing and our heartbeat, which we don't have to actively think about doing. And its main job is to keep us alive. So because its main job is simply survival, it has a negativity bias because we don't need to look for fun things to help keep us alive. Our brain is scanning for harmful things, anything negative, anything that's a possible threat, anything that's making you upset might be a possible threat. So when we dive deeper into how our nervous system is organized, we have, again, that voluntary part, and that is our somatic nervous system. That's how I'm talking and moving my hands right now. I'm choosing to do these things. Then we have our autonomic nervous system. Again, that's that automatic, involuntary, subconscious part. And that part has basically 3 states, 3 branches. We have the fight or flight branch, which shows up as anxiety. We have the rest and digest branch, and that is normally a good thing. But there's actually 2 parts of that, some recent research has come out breaking down that our vagus nerve, if you've heard about our vagus nerve, is a lot more complicated than we thought. So within this rest and digest part of our brain, we do have this safety part that helps us rest and helps us digest. And when that part of our brain is activated and we're in this resting, feeling safe space, that's when we're social, that's when we're creative, that's when we're our best, highest selves. But there is another part of this branch. And whenever our fight or flight goes on too long, we end up going into a shutdown or a freeze. And this shows up as depression, numbness, and overwhelm. And our body does this to protect us. It thinks that if we are running from a lion for forever and we keep running, we must not have outrun that lion. So now we need to try something different and play dead and just shut down. And our body also starts to numb us in case we're about to be eaten. So that's actually what depression most commonly is this freeze state of our brain getting activated. And it happens when we're in fight or flight for too long. Our body gets overwhelmed. So our automatic subconscious brain can't distinguish between threats. We have not adapted fully. This part of our brain that's ancient for survival, it has not adapted to our modern world. So every threat gets the same response as if a lion were chasing us. So if you have a work deadline, a school deadline, you get in a fight with your partner, you're about to give a public speaking event, your brain thinks that that's all equally as bad as a lion about to eat you. So our brain shifts into fight or flight gear. Our hearts start racing. We get physical manifestations. We feel anxious. And all of this happens without our conscious control. And the interesting thing is another threat that our body puts in the same category, it doesn't distinguish, is chronic symptoms. So if I'm showing up feeling really tired every day, or if I'm having, chronic headaches, or I'm having a lot of body cramping, anything that goes on for a long time, our body actually perceives these chronic symptoms as a threat. And any kind of feeling that we have that we are ill or have something that's not right, that's an uneasiness. And our body perceives that as a threat as well. So because of these chronic symptoms, we then go into fight or flight mode. And we don't realize that we're doing it. And we might not really feel maybe that acutely stressed in the moment. But again, this is all happening behind the scenes, behind the veil in our brain. So our subconscious brain goes into fight or flight mode whenever we have chronic ongoing symptoms or don't feel well, unless we consciously use tools to help shift out of this. And it's okay for us to do that because we do live in a modern world with different threats. We're not being chased by lions anymore. And so we do need to kind of retrain and help out our brain. Think of how stimulating our society is and how many people you see in a day now. Our ancestors used to see maybe 12 faces in a day. So we have to do some things to help our brain out and help what we call rewire our nervous system. So health anxiety is super common just because of the nature of the society that we live in. So why can't we just stay in fight or flight? Why do we want to shift out of it in the first place? So this is where our nervous system state and our emotions and our mental health ties directly into our physical health in a way that's really often overlooked. So when we're in fight or flight mode, again, it's subconscious. You are not choosing this. You might not even know it's happening. Your immune system is shut off. Your immune system is blunted. If you're running from a lion, your body is not putting its resources toward creating antibodies, its warrior cells to go fight infections. It's in survival mode. So our immune system shuts off. Our cells stop functioning fully. They're just sending out the bare minimum communication for survival. They're not doing all the communication to make sure our hormones are where we want, so we feel good, and make sure our brain is making all of the happy neurotransmitters. And fight or flight also causes our body and our brain to release anxiety chemicals. And these anxiety chemicals cause inflammation. So if we stay in fight or flight too long, we eventually downshift into that numbness freeze state. Again, where our body thinks we didn't outrun the lion, we didn't escape the threat. So we are playing dead. And if we're about to be eaten, we're starting to numb up. So it's not going to be so painful. So in this shutdown state, that's when we start to feel hopeless. We can feel disconnected. A lot of people start to feel a little bit dissociated from their body, kind of like they're walking in a dream. And then, feelings of extreme sadness can come up as well. So everything I'm describing is under the umbrella of something called the Polyvagal Theory. This is an area of psychology that is going to just keep taking off because it just helps explain everything so well. So our brain has those three states it can be in. It can either be in our optimal, safe, social, engaged, rest and digest state. It can be in our mobilized, got to outrun the lion, sympathetic state, Or it can be in that numb state where we went too long trying to outrun the lion. Our body thinks we didn't make it. So it's just going to shut down and start to numb up. So we want to be able to move through these three states. Everything our body does has some purpose. So we need to be able to be in sympathetic sometimes. What if something scary or dangerous is happening? We need to be able to mobilize, and our body does need to go into survival mode. But we need to be able to shift right back out of it, back into that safe, social, engaged mode where our immune system functions 100%, so we can fight off infections, and where our cells are communicating. So we're going to have balanced hormones. Our gut's going to be working. So we're going to be able to actually digest our food and use those building blocks from what we eat. So here's just a little bit of a deeper peek into the polyvagal nervous system theory. So this is a lot of information, so don't feel like you need to fully assimilate this. But I just wanted to show you another more thorough version of that diagram that we just looked at. And it shows how when we're in our safe social state, that's when we're able to be mindful and feel in the present moment. That's when we can feel curious and open. We're less likely to get in fights. That's when we feel calm, grounded. We feel like our best selves. We feel safe. This is the state that we would love to mainly live in. And when we're in this state, we have great digestion. Our intestinal motility, so how often we're having bowel movements, is usually working optimally. We have better resistance to infection. Our health is usually better. We have better circulation to our organs. So we're going to have better skin health, and we're going to have more sensation in our fingers and our toes. We're going to have more release of our feel-good brain hormones like oxytocin that are also anti-inflammatory. So all of our body's natural anti-inflammatory mechanisms, it circulates all the nutrients our body needs, it makes all the hormones we need to feel good. They all kick in when we're in this social safe state. When our body perceives some kind of threat, whether it's a work deadline or just, you feeling uneasy or something about the way our society is set up that's making you feel stressed, or if you have chronic symptoms, then that's when we're in the sympathetic state. And sympathetic is the technical term for the fight or flight state. When we're in sympathetic, we have all the symptoms here, racing heart, everything that you would associate with someone being nervous and giving a speech. And when we are in this state, we also are going to have less fuel storage. So our body's energy bank starts to drop. Our insulin activity goes wonky. So we start to get insulin resistance, and our cells don't let in blood sugar very well. So a lot of people can notice things like weight gain. They could be eating the most perfect diet. They could be working out every day. It doesn't matter. You're not going to lose the weight if your body feels like you're in this danger response. Our digestion isn't going to work very well. And then our immune response is also going to be blunted. And then when we stay in this go, 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 I've got to fix everything. Maybe my health symptoms are so concerning to me that I think about them a lot and I know something's wrong and I haven't figured out what it is yet. So I need to keep thinking about it. When we stay in that fight or flight state, even if it's with good intentions, when we stay there for a long time, eventually we do end up in freeze. This is where we feel that shutdown, that hopelessness, helplessness, numbness, and some disassociation. And so again, when we're in that state, our body's not working great. So we want flexibility. We want our body to be able to move on this diagram when needed. And ideally, we would never get to freeze state. Ideally, we would say hanging out in this rest state, go up to fight or flight when we need it, and drop back down, because our nervous system would be flexible and we would have low inflammation, and that would let our nervous system be flexible. So take a minute and, looking at this diagram, see if you can figure out what state you're in right now. It might be easier if you close your eyes and just kind of take a deep breath and tune in for a second. You can pay attention to your breathing, pay attention to your heart rate. Think about any stressors that have been on your mind, and see if you can nail down what state. You might be borderline. Let's see if you can figure out what state you're in. And so, what you just did, checking in on your state, just checking in and seeing where you're at mentally and what state you're in is actually really regulating to your nervous system because you tuned into your body. And when we tune into our body and we shift our energy from our mind down to our body, we actually help go into that safety, rest, healing brain state. So even just tuning in, that's what we call mindfulness, helps keep us in that state. So let's talk a little bit about modern stress because honestly, that's a really big reason why our illnesses do get so severe and why our symptoms go on for so long. And just the way our world is set up in this modern day and age, we live with a lot of chronic stress. We have things like deadlines and bills that are chronic, ongoing stressors. Our brain was made for a predator chasing after us. They either got us or they didn't. And then we went back to the safety of our village, hung out with our tribe, had that social time and that reset, and our brain and our body knew it was safe. But today, we have chronic stress that just keeps going on and on. It's not like, oh, I either pay my insurance bill or I don't. Like, no, it's due every month. So our brain has not fully adapted to this really significant change. And when we have health issues and when we have chronic symptoms, this does often lead us to a go, go, go state of searching and taking action. And this comes from a good place because we're trying to help ourselves, right? And we know deep down that something is wrong, even if someone, a medical professional even, is telling us that everything's okay. We know something's wrong. So we keep looking, we go on Google, we think about it, we spend a lot of time going, searching for the answers and trying to take action. And while we're doing that from a good place, it still puts us in fight or flight sympathetic mode. So our body is getting the signal, oh, I'm in an emergency survival state. Okay, I'm going to shut down the immune system. I'm going to shut down digestion. I'm going to shut down my cells' full communication. We're going to skimp on creating hormones because that's not important. And our body just stops resting and repairing. And our body needs to be constantly resting and repairing because our cells are constantly turning over. The cells that line our gut lining, think about all the food that touches and passes and scrapes past them. They're turning themselves over and replacing and regenerating themselves every 24 to 48 hours. So we really need our bodies to constantly be repairing because we don't think about it, but our bodies constantly do take damage. Our thoughts, our emotions, and even our past memories are all chemical cocktails in our brain, and they cause certain patterns, certain groups of our brain cells, our neurons, to fire certain sequences. So if we can stop our present firing sequence, our present way of having a go, go, go mentality about our health, then that's where we start to rewire our brain. And we still do all the things. We still help our health, but we need to do it from a little bit of a different perspective, or we're going to stay in the fight or flight state. And again, when we're in the fight or flight state, our immune system is down, everything's down, we're not healing. So everything, these things we're trying to do to help ourselves are actually turning out to be really counterproductive, unfortunately. So how do we get out of a fight or flight? Or even if it's been an ongoing fight or flight and we're to a freeze point, how do we get out of these? So the very first most important thing is we have to feel safe. Our body must feel safe. That survival scanning part of our brain has to think that we don't need to look for a lion right now. Our body uses safety cues from our environment to know whether it's safe. And it's not conscious cues. It's things that we're not even aware of. Our subconscious is scanning and picking up colors and lights and motion and activity and things that we're honestly not even aware of. So we knowing that that's how our brain works, we can actually train our brain to start to find this feeling of safety, because that is the number one thing that needs to happen to help start rewiring our brain. So brain health and rewiring our brain to be in a safe space so that we can be in that safe, resting, healing state and not in fight or flight is the missing component of most health programs. Because if you're doing all of these things, you're doing nutrition, maybe you're taking some pharmaceuticals or a bunch of supplements. But if you're in fight or flight, your immune system's not working and your body is not in healing mode. So the second you get off of those things, your body is just going to revert back to square one because it was kind of like a band-aid the whole time. So this brain health is a huge, crucial piece of the puzzle. This is what's missing from most chronic illness approaches. And it's so important. Our brain is so important. Our brain state matters so much because our nervous system, our brain and its connection to all of our nerves, affects our inflammation and our immune system. So we want balance and peace in our nervous system, in our brain, but physical health threats are very real. So we're not dismissing that these threats are there or that our symptoms are very real. We're just trying to keep our nervous system as calm as possible while we navigate and support our body so that we can optimize our healing. Because we want to be getting that nervous system side of healing where our immune system's functioning, our cells are working at the same time as supporting our body. We want to be doing both things. But again, if we're supporting our body without this brain part, we're not going to get very far. So inflammation, let's talk about inflammation for a little bit, because this is one of the, we talk about root causes. Inflammation is underneath most chronic symptoms, but there's also usually something underneath inflammation. So inflammation is kind of like a middle root cause. So let's talk about inflammation because it affects our brain a whole lot. And inflammation is one of the ways where we can actually help our brain be in a regulated, safe space by keeping inflammation low, because inflammation is a little bit of a threat to our brain. And so it puts us in a fight or flight state. So again, this is where if we come at helping and supporting our physical body at the same time as working on our nervous system and our brain, then we're going to have a really synergistic effect. So what are some ways you might know if you have chronic inflammation that's showing up in your nervous system? So there's so many more symptoms than I could write here, but here are probably some of the most common ones. So fatigue, depression, irritability, anxiety, brain fog, memory loss, chronic pain, whether that's in your body, headache, anywhere. Fibromyalgia, that is purely inflammation of the nervous system. Lack of motivation, reduced appetite, weight loss or gain, trouble sleeping, digestive issues, and a reduced ability for physical activity. So these are all signs that inflammation is affecting our nervous system. So what causes brain inflammation? Why do we have all of these signs showing up that inflammation is affecting our nervous system? So here are some of the things that, like it or not, in the modern world we're in, we do have to now pay attention to, because there's just so much of these things we're exposed to that they really are heavy hitters for causing brain inflammation. So a lot of things that are added to foods, a lot of inflammatory oils. So the way that most oils are processed, they're actually used with high flash heat processing, and that makes them go rancid. It oxidizes it, the oil goes bad. So a lot of times when we're eating processed food, part of the reason that it's so bad is actually just because the oils in it are super inflammatory to our cells and our brain. nutrient deficiencies, certain medications, not getting enough healthy fats because our brain actually needs healthy fat as the main way that it makes and protects its brain cells. And then things like heavy metals, toxins that we breathe in just driving down the highway. Anytime we have furniture in our home, any lotions that we're using. So a lot of this stuff can start to feel, kind of scary or again, just like another checklist of things to do. And so if you're starting to feel that in your body, just take a minute and remember that there's a way to go about this without being in go, 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 fight or flight mode. We can make changes from a place that feels really supportive and loving toward our body and do it in a way that feels natural and totally doable. So one thing at a time, maybe we explore one thing per week, and just go through and help lower these things that are dysregulating our brain. So there's so many more things on this list. I won't read them all, but impaired detox function is a really big one. Because our bodies are great at detoxing. They just need some support because of the amount of toxins that we're exposed to these days. And then low melatonin. So our brain's sleep hormone isn't just for sleep. It's actually anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer. It does so many things. And so because we look at screens and we now have great modern technology and electricity and lights, when the sun goes down, we're not in the dark. And so we need to be really mindful of, blue light and the things that can trick our brain into making less sleep hormone because our brain still thinks it's daytime. So that's just another way that we can support ourselves, something that we have control over. All of these things on this list, we have control over to do at home, which is so neat because they have such a big impact. And then the last one on here would be lowering our body inflammation, because body inflammation causes brain inflammation, which then causes more body inflammation. So for an example, if we're in pain, so we're not getting a lot of deep sleep, that's going to cause brain inflammation. Lack of sleep is going to cause brain inflammation. Then that brain inflammation causes us to be further in pain. Then we lose even more sleep. And then we have even more brain and body inflammation. And it just kind of cascades from there. Another example is if we have autoimmunity, but we don't know how to check for the root causes, the immune triggers that started our autoimmunity in the first place, then that immune imbalance causes inflammation in the body. We might start to get autoimmune symptoms like fatigue, body pain, depends based on what the autoimmune condition is. And then we're going to have brain inflammation, and our brain inflammation is going to make us feel overstimulated and depressed. So then it's going to be harder for us to make good nutrition choices, and we're going to just feel like eating out. But then we're going to get even more inflammation, and it just cycles on from there. So you get the picture, but basically paying attention to our body and our brain at the same time is what's crucial, because our whole body is so connected. I know we see different specialists for different parts of our body, but every part of our body is super connected and influencing every other part of our body. So you can break this inflammation cycle. Everything is connected, and you have to remember that you are a whole that's made of so many parts. We talked about the emotional health, mental health, all of that. And there's even more than that that goes into your health picture and who you are and how you function. There's no one thing that's going to fix you or one silver bullet for your health. So if anyone ever tells you, oh, you don't have to do any work to help heal, or holistic wellness isn't a lifestyle, I just have the one thing you need to do and then you're fine, that's a lie. Run away from that person. Because really, we are a holistic sum of so many parts. And that means that we do need to look at all of the parts. We can't neglect any of the parts. So the key to success is reducing your body and your brain inflammation at the same time, while also rewiring your brain, getting out of fight or flight, and addressing your emotions, your belief, and your mindset. And our mindset is huge in helping us view the world in a safer way and not view the world as a threat. So the other thing I like to point out here, because this was huge for me and I've seen it be huge for other people, is if you can know that you're truly doing everything in your power to support your health because you have that education, you know what's going on in your body, you kind of feel like your own doctor in a way, then you can leave that fight or flight mode of searching and you can relax into a rest and healing mode. Sometimes it just takes knowing that we are doing everything to allow us that permission to stop searching for answers. And that's when we truly do start healing and we can accept what's going on in our body. So here are 3 things that you can start doing right now, no matter how small they sound. Repetition makes them have a huge impact. You would be amazed. Again, your brain is so powerful. So every night or whenever during the day works for you, if you say 3 things you're grateful for, and you can do this with a partner if you live with a partner, gratitude is so powerful because it helps combat that negativity bias that our brain has. So that threat scanning, the way that our brain's main object is for survival. And so it's not pointing out all the happy things that you had happened to you that day. It's threat scanning. It's only looking at the negative, potentially scary things, all the times you felt something bad, a bad emotion. So gratitude helps shift that and build up our positive file cabinet because our brain has our negative file cabinet to reference fully taken care of for us. We don't need to help it with that. And again, there's new waves of research coming out, which I'm so excited about because I personally don't believe research is everything at all. Research is just what someone has already chosen to research. But I do think that research really helps people move forward and helps things get integrated into conventional care. So research is showing that gratitude can improve sleep. It can boost our mood. It does help our immune system work even better. And it lowers our risk of disease. So that's one thing, is 3 things you're grateful for, saying that every day. And then the next thing is sounds simple, going to bed and waking at the same time every day. So this includes the weekends. This includes if you're in school, this would include even if you have different schedules or if you're a teacher. This boosts our melatonin, that brain anti-inflammatory hormone we talked about. And when we boost melatonin, we get deeper sleep. So we get more restorative sleep, we get more repair, and our brain is going to be more in that rest state. Our pain levels are going to feel lower, but also having this high melatonin level just keeps inflammation lower in our brain and our whole body. That's why it's actually helpful as an anti-cancer hormone. So going to bed, waking at the same time every day, super helpful for making sure we have optimal sleep hormone levels every night. And then the third is kind of fun. So have mindful laughter at least once a day. So mindful being not just random spontaneous laughter, but you purposely going out of your way to make yourself laugh, thinking about how laughing is going to help you. So you could tell yourself a joke. You could laugh out loud at a funny show that you put on to make sure you get your laughter in. Or you can just all of a sudden stand there and decide, I'm going to start laughing right now. So the reason laughter is so helpful is because it induces feelings of safety. So remember how we talked about our brain's feeling of safety isn't just me saying, I am safe. It's our brain scanning, picking up things that we're not even thinking about. And one of those things is, how often am I laughing? Because I'm not laughing if I'm being chased by a lion. And I'm not laughing if I think I might be in a dangerous situation. I'm only laughing when I feel safe and when my body knows it's safe. So because of that, that's a cue that slowly helps our body leave fight or flight and come back down to rest so that our immune system works, so that everything works, so that our bodies can heal. And let's do a bonus 4th thing, because we can do this one together right now. So think about something that makes you really happy for a minute right now. Maybe it's your family. If you have grandkids, maybe it's your grandkids. If you have a cute pet, maybe it's your pet. Just think about something that makes you feel like really happy. And if you think about this for a minute, so go ahead and close your eyes, and whatever it is you're thinking about, try to envision it having just the cutest face or seeing someone smiling. Whatever makes you feel so happy. Maybe it's beautiful flowers. And really try to visualize this in your mind, because our minds are so powerful. Our body and brain creates the same chemicals from thinking about doing something or seeing something as if we were actually seeing it. So think about this thing. And just now, while you did that, your body started making more antibodies. So if you were exposed to someone who had a cold lately, or your body is, making its regular antibodies to help keep everything that we have in our bodies suppressed and in check, any infections that we have suppressed, you just made more antibodies, more warrior cells in that minute, just by thinking about something happy. So I cannot stress how powerful our brains are and how much we are not taking full advantage of power of visualization, and the power that our brain has over our immune system and over our body. So I want everyone here, if you're here because you have chronic symptoms, or you feel like something's wrong with your health, or you just don't feel fully well, I want you to have hope. You probably have a huge healing tool in your brain that you haven't even tapped into. And there's, we talked about body inflammation and brain inflammation. A lot of people have not fully explored that area. So if you can understand how your body actually processes and uses the foods you eat as building blocks, then you're able to choose what it needs in the moment. If you can drop your pain levels enough that you can think, if you can change your mindset and perspective in a way that lowers your stress, if you can understand your hormones so you know when they need balancing and support, if you can remove toxins from your lifestyle and help support your body's own detox processes, if you can learn your immune triggers and understand the hidden root causes of inflammation, if you can learn about what herbs and nutraceuticals you can use as tools to help support your energy and mental clarity and your mood and your immune function, your detox, lower inflammation, all of that. And if you can understand how the medical system works behind the scenes so that you can effectively self-advocate because you know what your treatment options are, and if you can learn about all the holistic treatment options and what all practitioners are out there, there's a lot of options and practitioners people have never heard of. And so sometimes we end up choosing things that don't feel aligned with us, or we end up taking a medication or even a supplement or doing a natural therapy that we don't feel good about. That actually puts our body in fight or flight mode. So it's super important that we end up having a good match with whoever we work with. And if you can understand your body and your brain on a deep level, so you can actually support and nourish your body and brain instead of just trying to go, fix everything and suppressing symptoms, then you can heal. I promise you, you can heal. So I just want everyone who's struggling with anything to have hope. And then I'll just spend a couple minutes and then we'll do question and answer after this. For anyone who's interested, I just want to let you know about my Surviving to Thriving in 90 Days program. And we go through everything I just said. Here are the main pillars of what we talk about in the program. We meet every week and do brain rewiring exercises to shift us out of fight or flight and keep us in a rest healing state so that everything else we're doing is working double time to help us heal even faster, even more. And then this is going through everything, literally everything that we can do to support our bodies at home. It's not that we need to do all the things. It's giving you the options and the tools so that you pick what feels right for you. You take what you like and you leave what you don't. And you figure out what feels in alignment with you, because holistic health is truly a lifelong journey. It's a lifestyle. So it can't be something that we just do for 90 days. It needs to be something that we understand on a deep level and we integrate slowly with support and mentorship in a way that feels sustainable and that feels healing and supportive and not like a checklist and not stressful and putting us in fight or flight. So going through all of these things, using food as medicine, how to actually support our cells and our mitochondria, what all of our options are, all of that is everything I use to heal and everything I've used a lot of people to heal. So since I've transitioned out of the clinic and into being a health coach, so I can work with people virtually everywhere, that's when I made this 90-day program. So if you do want to learn about this, feel free to book a free call with me. I'll put it in the chat in a minute, but it's also on my website. And if you found me on social media, the link that's in my profile has a way to book a call with me too. I have a lot more information on my website. Definitely follow me on social media. I post lots of like educational videos and things like that. And then this is the first workshop I've done like this, but I love doing this kind of thing. So I'm hoping to do more of these. So feel free to make sure you're on the email list so that you can stay up to date on those kind of things. And then before we do Q&A, last thing, at the end of all the sessions we do, I like to do a self-love hug. It sounds silly, but it creates oxytocin, which is an anti-inflammatory hormone that helps shift us into a safe state. And also it acknowledges what you are doing for your body in a supportive, loving way, instead of just like checkbox, got to do all the things, fight or flight way. So give yourself a big hug. You can rub your hands on your back. If you can't reach around or you don't like giving yourself a hug, give yourself a pat on the back. And just recognize that you showing up today is an act of self-love. And true healing comes from the way that you show up for yourself and love yourself. It's not from looking up all the newest cutting edge things and making sure you're doing them all. It's really, is what you're doing, is it supportive? Does it feel good? Because your nervous system needs to be in a good state for what you're doing to have any real influence anyway. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this screen so that we can do some question and answer. So if you have any questions, you know how to raise your little hand button, feel free to do that. Or you can just unmute yourself and say something. But this is your time. If you have any questions that you've been wanting to ask your doctor, or you're curious about anything we just talked about, or you're curious about any condition, the floor is yours. And while you think of questions, I'm going to post the way to look at the program and book a chat with me in the chat box in case you are interested. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Oh, I see your chat. Okay. Helping a teenager through high anxiety. Okay. So, that is a great question. You know, one thing that I see, and this could not be the case at all, but one thing that I do see affecting a lot of teenagers that are teenagers right now is just the way that having access to so much information with Google at their fingertips and technology, and everyone has a phone because everyone else has a phone. So it's how we communicate now. And all of our phones have apps now. And so all of this is great. I'm a huge fan of how we're all able to be connected, and that's how I'm able to be seeing all of you right now. But it does bring up the need for us to regulate our nervous system more, just because that stimulation, again, is new. Like our brain isn't used to that. That is brand new. So our survival threat scanning mechanism goes off the charts. Every time all these new videos pop up with like flashing colors and things that signal our brain to be on alert. And then again, just how many faces we see and all the stressors that especially teenagers are facing. So I do think having tools to help regulate the nervous system is a really good place to start with someone who's a teenager for sure. And she doesn't like breathing work, so that's hard. Some people who don't like breathing work, it's actually because it makes them more anxious. And that's when we've been in fight or flight for a really long time. Tuning into our body and focusing on our breathing actually feels scary, and it actually makes our anxiety even worse. So I would say, the things that we talked about today. So doing some of the gratitude work, trying to visualize and think about things that you like, trying to have the consistent sleep schedule, things like that. But also I would focus too on what you can do body wise. So like if she's not willing to tune into breathing stuff quite yet, I would see if there's a way that she feels like she can support herself with filtered water and nutrition that has B vitamins so that her brain can actually make the hormones it needs to not feel anxious. Looking at a lot of things from that perspective. But also, there's a lot of brain retraining exercises that aren't breathing. There's guided meditations. There's like exercises where you can send healing. There's tapping. A lot of young people, tapping works really, really well for them. Tapping is something that we learn in the program, but there's also, I'm sure you could find a YouTube video to help her out. Yeah, I would think about things like tapping and what you can do body-wise to lower inflammation. Less likely, yeah, breathing makes her feel worse in the moment and unwilling to let it. Yeah. And that is just a sign of how dysregulated the nervous system is. I was at that point when I had a lot of chronic symptoms and I really wasn't feeling good. People would try to get me started with breathing exercises. And that's actually not great for someone who's really in sympathetic state. So doing other things like guided visualizations, tapping, all the other ways that we can rewire our brain. I would go with things that aren't breathing exercises. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? Are B vitamins okay for those who have histamine intolerance? So yes, but B vitamins can cause a histamine production. So histamine intolerance, that's someone who's making a lot of histamine, which is a form of inflammation. So people who have histamine intolerance are going to feel worse after they eat meals. They might get really sleepy. They might get a headache. People who get flushed really easily, and people who get a lot of anxiety tend to have high histamine, just because that's how histamine affects our body. It causes all those things. So let's see. B vitamins usually are okay if we're taking them with food. But for someone who has really, really high levels of histamine, we're actually going to want to hold off on supplements and do some brain retraining stuff first, because just jumping in with supplements can make our brain perceive anything new coming in as a threat. So people who can't tolerate a lot of things or they react to every supplement, that's usually part of what's going on. What are some ways to help your vagus nerve? That is a great question. So our vagus nerve is that rest and digest part of us. It also does hold the freeze response, but that's the unconscious part. There are some ways that we can directly influence our vagus nerve, and that actually helps, again, shift us into a calmer, restful state. So oddly enough, the things that help tone our vagus nerve and help strengthen our body's ability to be in a rest state would be singing, because our vagus nerve is housed in our throat. So singing, humming, when we do something like using our gaze in different points, then when we're moving our eyes back and forth, we're actually activating our vagus nerve too. So like holding our head steady, but moving our eyes in different directions and letting them stay to one side. And so we use our vagus nerve to yawn. So there's a lot of exercises we can do, like the humming and moving our eyes back and forth. And eventually that actually usually makes most people yawn, which is pretty funny. And then we can also do things that help resync both sides of our brain, because when our brain is communicating fully, both sides, then we're able to, again, better be in that healing state because we're more embodied, we're more present, and we're also more in our body. So using body exercises is huge because a lot of times people have anxiety or they have really uncomfortable symptoms. And these symptoms feel like they're in your head, but actually trying to go about anxiety from a head mental thinking approach is not the way to go. We can get to our head from our body. So we can use our body as a gateway to, do supportive things that actually change our anxiety levels, change the way our brain thinks. So one of the things that helps people get in their body, super simple, just rubbing your arms or rubbing your legs. Some people prefer to tap. If you have fibromyalgia, then that's probably not going to be the favorite one. You could just gently touch. Other things would be doing different kinds of tapping. You can tap while you look at the side you're tapping at, and then tap the other side and look at that side, and keep looking back and forth as you tap. There's so many things. We dive into so many options because obviously not one thing's going to feel great for everyone. So we give tons of options in the program I do where we talk about that stuff a lot. All right. All right. Well, we are just at time here. I just wanted to remind everyone the first part of the Surviving to Thriving module, that 90-day program I created, is actually free, the first few lessons. So if you look at the link that I put in the chat, where you just go to my website and find it, if you scroll down to the bottom of that page, it'll say test drive the course for free. So if you liked what we talked about today, I actually talk a lot more about inflammation and brain health, and go a little bit more into some specifics. It's not exactly what we talked about today, but there's a little bit of overlap. So if you want to learn a little bit more, that's a great place, I would say, to keep learning. Yeah, and if you enjoyed showing up today, then definitely keep an eye because I do want to host more things like this in the future for sure. All right. Thank you all for coming. Bye. Have a good day.